On today's news, there was outrage over a planned SmackDown match being cut, some more details ahead of NXT's rebrand on Tuesday, a review of last night's SmackDown, and a review of Rampage. Make sure you subscribe for more daily wrestling news videos. I still refuse to dance for them. I'm not Ollie.
Support WrestleTalk!
Last night's SmackDown, emanating from Madison Square Garden, was received pretty well, all things considered. Long and interesting matches, exciting angles, a wild Brock Lesnar, the return of the Demon. There was a lot to enjoy on the show. However, there was one thing that stood out about the show. There was no women's wrestling for the second week in a row. Outside of a contract signing between Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair and a throwaway cameo backstage with Shotzi and Nox, there were no other women featured on the show, aside from Sonya Deville. However, this seemingly wasn't always the plan, as John Pollock of PW Torch is reporting that there was a planned tag team match of Carmella and Zelina Vega versus Liv Morgan and Toni Storm that was cut at the last minute due to time constraints. Fightful Select reported that the same tag match was due to occur, but Morgan's tag team partner was noted as just a partner. This is particularly egregious not just for the lack of women's wrestling, but because the show was built around tributes to 9/11, and Zelina Vega lost her father in 9/11. Her disappointment was clear to see as she posted her Naruto-inspired gear that she had already changed into that she was seemingly going to wear for the match, with the caption, "Never mind." Carmella and Liv Morgan were also clearly not a fan of being left off the show, with them both posting a simple ellipsis to show their disappointment at the scrapped match. To add to fans' outrage, a planned segment with Naomi and Sonya Deville was also scrapped from the show, which, if the last 2 weeks are anything to go by, would have taken quite literally 30 seconds of TV time. Fans did not take kindly to these scrapped segments, with David Bixenspan posting, "Seriously, time is time and shit happens, but maybe prioritize the match with the 9/11 victim's daughter on the show with multiple 9/11 tributes the date before the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Brad Stutz also posted, "Cutting Zelina's match on the 9/11 show is atrocious, but more than anything, it's indicative that WWE just doesn't have their wits about them anymore. At any other point in company history, Zelina would have been front and center on the 9/11 tribute show telling her story." What did you think of WWE cutting these segments? Let me know in the comments, as I'll be replying to people from out of nowhere for the first 30 minutes after this video goes live. It's almost time for NXT's new 2.0 rebrand on Tuesday, and we're still not exactly sure what we're going to see. However, Sean Ross Sapp on Fightful Select has reported that NXT was hoping to have more characters, although it is noted that this was said in a broad sense. The report also states that this is one of the few things talent have been told about the rebrand, with most inquiries being met with non-answers. Bastion Booger Mantor and the Goon to NXT confirmed. It was also noted that talent was currently in the dark about who would be running the show, as Triple H is off due to health issues, and that the revamped Capitol Wrestling Center looks to physically be an improvement, being compared to a much scaled down version of main roster TV sets. And now it's time for my review of last night's MSG Super SmackDown in about 5 minutes. Thank you for being awesome Pledgehammers on Patreon. Will always mark out for Ollie Landrum and the Roller Coaster, Robert Acosta. You can get your own shout out by visiting us at patreon.com/WrestleTalk, plus a load of extra bonus content. The Super SmackDown from MSG kicked off with a video package of remembrance for 9/11, which was genuinely quite emotional and well done. Shame they didn't have Zelina Vega on the show. Roman Reigns instead kicked off the show, after it was announced that it's going to be Reigns versus Balor again at Extreme Rules, and also that it's going to be Street Profits versus Usos for the tag titles tonight, after the Street Profits were successful in their championship contenders match last week. Pat McAfee pointed out on commentary, welcome back by the way Pat, how important championship contenders matches are because of this. And I had to rack my brain for a minute because I did not remember the Profits winning any sort of contenders match, championship or otherwise. And then I remembered the match last week was thrown out because Jimmy started beating up Montez Ford, or Jay, one of the two, which somehow has counted as a victory for the Profits, and the commentary team have the gall to treat it as if the Profits won the match clean to set up this match. Funnily enough, we didn't get a recap of that championship contenders match because that wouldn't fit the narrative now, would it? Also, if that was a DQ win for the Profits, how dumb do the Usos look for causing that DQ? Anyway, Reigns cuts a promo telling MSG to acknowledge him before Lumberjack Lesnar comes out to interrupt. Paul Heyman wonderfully asks him, of all the titles we could go for together, why the Universal title? To which Lesnar responds, why didn't you tell Reigns I was going to be there at SummerSlam? Reigns leaves Heyman in the ring, to which Heyman, shakily at first, begins to introduce Brock Lesnar once again, like the old days. You're reigning, defending, etc. But then Lesnar tells Heyman, before Reigns fires him, accept his challenge for the title. He gives him 5 seconds, but at 2, he picks up Heyman into an F5, but Heyman gets saved by Reigns and the Usos, who attempt to beat down Lesnar, but he manages to get some suplexes off to stand tall. Backstage, Heyman tells Kayla Braxton that Reigns will answer Lesnar's challenge when he deems it appropriate. This was very fun stuff to kick off the show, though I now feel that the will Heyman side with Lesnar question has now been answered, and that's no. Which means he totally will, and it won't make sense because Lesnar nearly beat him up here, but sure, unless this was all part of the plan for some reason. Then came a complete house show 10-man tag match of Nakamura, the Mysterios, Rick Boogs, and Big E versus Otis, Sami Zayn, Apollo Crews, and Ziggler and Rude. Sami Zayn before the match brought out Trae Young, who I'm reliably informed is a sport person, who the crowd did not like. Boo, sport person. Big E won with a big ending after the classic spot where everyone does a big move one after another, and then did a promo saying he could cash in whenever. He sure can. After that came the contract signing between Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair, where Belair pointed out that Becky never used to run from a fight, but since she's come back, that's all she's been doing. She signs the contract and then Becky comes out and looks like a proper knob. It was great. She went fully heel here, turning on the crowd and asking them if they were really going to side with a flash in the pan over her. She left her baby daughter at home to come back for the fans, and this is the thanks she gets. She gets goaded into signing the contract, and in a cool little moment, she throws the contract in Bianca's face, but Bianca catches it. This was good, solid stuff. Big E backstage laughs at Paul Heyman after Heyman doesn't take a ride on Shotzi and Knox's tank. Okay, and then it was time for a SummerSlam rematch between Edge and Rollins. And I've had my gripes with why this match is even happening in the first place, but you know what? This match was excellent. Possibly even better than their SummerSlam encounter, which was the match of the night in my opinion. After a whole bunch of near falls, including Seth kicking out of a pedigree, but that's Seth's move. Edge kicking out of a glam slam, but that's Edge's wife's move. And Seth kicking out of a spear, but that's, wait, what? Seth managed to pick up the win after a low blow followed by multiple super kicks and a stomp. Commentary put over Edge's neck issues as to why the stomp was extra terrible for him to take. Look, this was excellent, a really fun match to watch, and the stretcher job Edge did afterwards was wonderful. It really sold the emotion behind it. But why didn't this match happen at SummerSlam? What was the benefit of having Edge win there to then lose here? Who's more over coming out of this? Neither of them, because now they're one win apiece. I don't want to crap on it too much because it was awesome, but I just feel like the reason for it even happening is pretty non-existent. Roman backstage hypes up the Usos ahead of their tag title match and then says to Heyman, I saved you. Why didn't you tell me Brock would be at SummerSlam? To which Heyman has no response. I like this. And then it was the main event of Street Profits versus Usos in a match that Street Profits definitely earned by winning their championship contenders match last week. You know, that match that they definitely won. Clean. Regardless, this was also a really fun match. Lots of near falls and fun action, including Dawkins kicking out of a series of super kicks and a splash? What? Okay. But as Montez Ford hits a frog splash and is going for the cover, Reigns runs in and causes the DQ by choking him out. Hey, a DQ finish that actually makes sense. You can do them right. Well done, WWE. I think it makes perfect sense for Reigns to want to cause the DQ in order to make sure that the Usos keep their titles. The bloodline being on top and running WWE is everything to him, so I think the character motivation is perfect here. Reigns then very quickly gets on the mic and says, if Lesnar wants some, he can come get some, which was not played up as a big deal at all, considering his response to Lesnar was played up through the whole show. So Brock versus Reigns confirmed? But the show didn't end there because we need to squeeze in one more thing. The return of Demon Finn Balor, following his tease from last week. He looked cool and did a stare down with Reigns, while commentary said it would be Demon Balor versus Reigns at Extreme Rules. Now look, I know why WWE did it on this show, because clicks and views and tweets and stuff, but why would you have Demon Balor come out here and not save it for Extreme Rules? Surely that would have made it feel like much more of a moment, and as we know, WWE bloody loves their moments. Just continue the teases for a couple weeks, just have the heartbeat play and let the fans know that it's probably going to be the Demon at Extreme Rules. Also, not a huge fan of the fact that Demon Balor is back probably just to lose to Reigns at Extreme Rules. That's not great. There's a chance that Lesnar costs Reigns at Extreme Rules and Balor wins, but I don't see that happening. So that was the show. Let me know what you thought of it by voting in the poll on our community tab, where 73% of you voted for Demon Balor is back. I thought this was an awesome show, all things considered. The stories made sense, the matches were excellent, and while I disagree with some things like bringing out Demon Balor here and the fact that Rollins won the Edge rematch, I can't rate this lower than a 5 out of 5 show by SmackDown standards. And now over to Tempest for a review of AEW Rampage.
Where do you even get a stun gun? What's going on, WrestleTalk friends and fans? Tempest the Wrestler is back with another review of AEW Rampage in about 3 minutes. So this week's show opened with the match that was preempted from All Out due to travel issues, Pac versus Andrade, and they skipped right to the action, not even giving them a chance to do their entrances. Andrade really hasn't had the same spark that he had in NXT during his first few months in AEW, but he seemed to shake all of that off in this match with Pac. This was an excellent match. When they're on their game, these are two of the best wrestlers in the entire world, and they showed that in this match as they went back and forth with a bunch of really innovative offense, with Pac hitting a really cool looking Hurricane Rana off the top rope, and Andrade hitting a corkscrew springboard plancha. The one negative aspect of this match, however, was the finish, as Pac had Andrade locked in the brutalizer, and Jose jumped up on the ring apron with a stun gun. I don't know how he got a hold of one of those, but then Chavo Guerrero hit Pac with the clipboard, allowing Andrade to get the win. The match itself was an easy 5 out of 5 segment, but the finish and then the post-match where Andrade kicked Chavo out of the club was a bit of a downer. This gets a 4 out of 5. We then got an in-ring promo from Darby Allin and Sting, where Darby Allin called Shawn Spears a generic piece of shit, as opposed to a lavish, extravagant piece of shit. Sting then talked about how Tully Blanchard had been riding the Four Horsemen's coattails for years before Tully came out, distracting Sting long enough for Shawn Spears to hit the C4 on Darby Allin on the floor. I'm mildly interested to see where they go with this whole Sting and Tully Blanchard thing. They are both quite old after all. Sting can still go, I'm not quite so sure about Tully. But it does seem that Darby and Sting will be going up against the Pinnacle in some fashion in the coming months. That sounds pretty good to me. This segment gets a 3 out of 5. We got a pair of vignettes with Adam Cole and Daniel Bryan, with Daniel Bryanson, with Bryan Danielson. It's gonna take me a while to get used to it. I don't really give ratings for the backstage pre-recorded vignette promos, but these were both excellent. It's Daniel Bryan, oh my god, I'm doing it unironically. It's Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson. They can both talk, you know it's gonna be great. We then got a 6-woman tag team match as Britt Baker, Rebel, and Jamie Hayter took on Ruby Soho, Riho, and Chris Statlander. Personally, this is exactly the type of match that I hope to see on AEW television going forward with the women's division. They allow so many more women to get involved in these 6-woman tag team matches, and everyone here shined. Everyone did their job well. This was a very solid little match as they went back and forth for a little while before Ruby Soho pinned Rebel with her kick. This was the obvious finish as they continue to build towards Ruby Soho and Britt Baker for the title. I have no complaints here. This was a very solid segment and I hope to see more like it. This gets a 4 out of 5. We then got the main event as Brian Pillman Jr. took on Max Caster. Typically, I would say that this is a fairly lackluster main event for what should be a pretty big show with the first Rampage after All Out, but they're doing their best to give Brian Pillman Jr. a bit of a push before his match with MJF, so I'm not going to harp on them too much. This was a very solid main event with Anthony Bowens trying to get involved on the outside before Brian Pillman was able to come back and hit his diving clothesline on Max Caster for the win. Getting a win in your hometown. What a novel concept. After the match, Anthony Bowens attacked Brian Pillman from behind, only for Jon Moxley to make the save as the Cincinnati boys sent the crowd home happy and took us off the air with a very good segment. I like that they're using this spot to move Brian Pillman up the card a little bit, and we'll see how he performs going up against bigger talents like MJF in the future. This was a very solid main event. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Overall, this was a fairly missable episode of AEW Rampage. The opening match was very good, but the finish did kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth, and everything else on the show, there wasn't anything wrong with it per se, but there was nothing that you needed to go out of your way to see either. So if this gets like a high 3 out of 5, low 4 out of 5, somewhere in there, I'll give it a 3 out of 5, but I could go either way. And that just about wraps it up for me. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this show and last night's SmackDown, make sure you go over to WrestleTalk podcast later on today, where myself and Chopper Pete Quinnell will be breaking down both shows in detail. Until then, be kind, rewind, and jam that jam.
Hey you, do you want some cool wrestling merch like this, and this, and this? Of course you do, and right now you can get a code for 20% off our biggest sale ever from WrestleShop.com exclusively at our new WrestleShop Instagram. Head to the link in the description or at WrestleShop.com on Instagram where you can find your code for 20% off clothing and mugs right now.
The two titans of WrestleTalk will collide, best friend versus best friend, to decide who's the best at booking. Kurt Angle's retirement.